Now let's continue our analysis of the knots and complications of Nigerian politics, looking at the Social Democratic Party, or SDP in particular, and the other main parties in general. You might have heard the SDP's presidential candidate earlier, Prince Adewale Adebayo, making the case for the party in the face of the massive reported hemorrhaging of its members who are said to have left in droves. How much of a resounding blow is this for the SDP so close to a presidential election? And what does that tell us about this once indisputable alternative in Nigerian politics, which for many decades embodied the spirit and the hope of a political third force? And of course, with 2023 soon upon us, preparations are well underway for the start of the campaign season. But will it be as noisy and as expensive as in the past? Or is this one likely to be a more sober, more muted affair with less focus on who can outspend the other and more about the issues, which, it has to be said, are so many? Well, with their perspectives on those talking points of the day and more, I'm joined now in the studio by the journalist, policy strategist and Arise News analyst Waziri Adio, and by the political affairs commentator, Arise News analyst and lecturer at Bayes University in Abuja, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. And you being the prof, I have to come to you first. Assess for us what's been happening in this once touted third force political party in Nigeria, the SDP, and what that explosive mix of factional infighting, defections, and all the other bizarre twists mean for the survival of the party, never mind its hopes of getting something at any level in 2023. We had the presidential candidate sitting here just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I had him, and I thought he was quite eloquent, very, very confident, but of course he exhibited the common traits, that the average politician will always have, which is to, you begin to wonder where is his confidence coming from, from some existing realities, from your own independent judgment and assessment. You just want to believe, with greatest respect to them, that it's a party that is still at the fringe, It's okay, most of these people, they are very gifted, they're very good in terms of, populating the idea space. They provide a lot in the intellectual, in injecting some intellect into the discourse on what the problem is. They're very good in that area. But in terms of realities, going by structures, when we talk about structures, we're talking about people. We're talking about resources, not necessarily money, resources. We're talking about pedigree. You find them still wanting. This is not to say that they are not playing any role. They definitely are playing a very good role, stimulating the space, making us realize that there could be alternative, maybe not in the present, but in the future. But it also shows that, life is about mutations and gestations. SDP was once a powerhouse in this country. But of course, realities have changed, things have changed. They are somewhat at the backstage. It will still take a lot more effort, maybe not in the present dispensation, but maybe sometimes in the future if they continue like this. But the problem we always have is that once they make a trial, at some point, you find them withdrawing, allowing the existing behemoths to continue their reign. We need some more sustainability on their part so that they can build themselves to the level of the behemoths they have, So I commend him. I like his courage, his confidence, very brilliant man, and he's done well in the private sector. He's a media owner. And I think there's also a problem with his a critical assessment, somewhat unsalutary evaluation of the role of the media.
Absolutely.
And from my understanding, I think the media is basically a reflection of what is happening in the society. You cannot discountenance the place of the PDP and the APC, and of course, lately the Labour Party, in the political space, going by the individuals involved, the strength of their personalities, strong characters with solid pedigrees. They've had substantial visibility in the Nigerian space over the years. So you cannot discountenance this, and you cannot pretend that it's not adding up, to how they should be evaluated. And it is this evaluation, this standing of these individuals and the political party that the media is mirroring. So the media is not necessarily favoring them in any way, not necessarily pandering to their whims and caprices because of commercial reasons, but just a basic mirror of the reality on ground. That's where I thought he made that mistake. But I understand, I have some sympathies with him. Do not forget I said he's very intelligent, very good understanding of the situation, but they still have some more work to do, and they may not achieve what they want to achieve in the present circumstance, but maybe in the future they can begin to have some levels of representations and some levels of some other tiers of government, maybe governors, senators, House of Reps, then they can grow to the presidency.
Sort of like what APGA is doing.
Yeah, gradually,
not getting too ambitious.
That's right.
But let me come to you, Waziri Adio, sitting there patiently as always, and as we gauge the mercury of political misfortunes, if you like, rising dramatically for the SDP. I wonder if you think that their way of reviving their fortunes is by attracting personalities in a society where politics is driven by personalities.
Well, I want to start with saying, there are two SDPs that we've seen in the last 30 years or so. There was the original SDP that was formed under the General Ibrahim Babangida administration.
Which was the winning party.
Yes, there were two parties, SDP and NRC. Then lately, there was a reincarnation of SDP. At that time, there were just two parties, right? Now, we've gone through different circles where presently we have 18 parties, but there was a time we have more than 80 parties. So in the midst of all of that, the attempt to resuscitate some parties, for example, we have PRP, we have AD, there's even UPN, at some point, when people try to resuscitate parties to appeal to nostalgia and all of that, that second coming doesn't really, catch on. Despite whatever I say that is the dream party.
So you don't believe in reincarnation?
Well, in this instance, it hasn't really worked. If you look at the Second Republic, for example, PRP, led by Aminu Kano, was a strong party. They actually won the governorship election in Kano, Old Kano State, and Old Kaduna State, right? But the present PRP. SDP.
Yeah, no, you have a point.
SDP, won in the National Assembly and also won the election, the Abiola election that was annulled. But can you compare that SDP to the SDP of now? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So yes, is there a pathway for them? I listened to him very carefully, and I want to respect his views. He sounded very eloquent. He sounded very confident and convinced, and I want to respect that, and I think we should all respect that. We get to see more as the campaigns officially start late September, and we have a long period of campaign. And there's something about politicians, and I think we should also always factor this into all our discussions and permutations. You have to be very confident to be a politician. You have to be very hopeful, even when every other person tells you that you stand no chance.
Yeah.
A typical politician will still believe that look at the recent elections we've had. You listen to them and they will tell you, "I will win. I will be the one that will be sworn in."
Yeah, that is
then
true.
You hold the election and the person does not even get up to 10% of the votes. So there's something that goes with being a politician. You have to be eternally hopeful and confident. If you are not sounding confident, why should people follow you? So I will hold judgment on how SDP will perform, how Mr. Adebayo will perform until the election in February next year. So the field is open. Everybody is free to say that they are the ones that will win, or they are the ones that have greater resonance with the people. We get to know the day after, the morning after the election.
Well, that's wise counsel. And let me come to you, Prof. Given all we've said, I mean, beyond the fact that, as Waziri said, let's wait and see, going forward. I mean, can the SDP lay some claim, as Mr. Adebayo was saying, to being a potential third force still in Nigerian politics?
Well, Charles, it might be unfair, if we begin to pass very strong judgments on the SDP, but at the same time, it's also going to be impossible for us not to do so, you know. But in the circumstance, you know, I do not see how they can lay that claim, you know. And we're talking about third force means that we have some two strong forces, PDP, APC, almost undisputable. And we now saw a Labour Party emerging from nowhere and challenging these two parties. So that ordinarily qualifies naturally as a third force, you know, and causing some scare, you know, pulling out comments, you know, from leaders of these two pre-existing parties, you know. So that looks like the third force, for instance. Even if we are going to be talking about a fourth force, for instance, my mind will be going to the party that is being sponsored by former governor of Kano State, NNPP. My mind will readily go there, not necessarily SDP. Maybe SDP, once more, with the greatest respect, will be coming fifth, you know. And against that background, I don't see how they can, you know, pull any surprise in 20. So it's very difficult to. It's unfortunate we're passing this judgment, but it's also not impossible to do so, you know. But what I see generally, again, I think is what I was really trying to emphasize. You know, maybe the word might be inappropriate for us to use, but of course, I'm looking for another word to use other than to say that sometimes I see some level of delusion in the way politicians project their chances. You know, of course, in the primaries that recently concluded primaries, presidential primary, we saw some of them saying that I'm going to be the 16th president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you know, with so much confidence, so much razzmatazz, you know. And of course, the primaries held, some of these people didn't even call one vote, you know. So you start wondering, what is that inner strength? You know, where do they derive that inner strength from that make them to make these, you know, overwhelming, you know, declarations?
Well, without sounding rude, some people might argue that the word delusional is
that's what I'm saying, but I'm looking for another word to use, really.
Word.
No, that's what I'm actually looking for another word. But that's what it is, really, you know. I mean, there are contests in which you can use words and you can be exonerated. You may not be convicted of being rude. I'm not trying to be rude. I respect all of them. But of course, there's some inner strength, you know, that comes out from them. But of course, when you see it in practical, realistic terms, you see that it just falls flat.
Well, let's come.
But that's the character of the politician all over the world. It's not necessarily peculiar to Nigeria.
Well, let's come to a wordsmith like Waziri Adio. Since you and I are searching for a different word, I mean, I wonder why, in the face of such apparently insurmountable odds, people like Prince Adebayo, who was on the program, persist in running for office.
Well, I think they have a right to, and democracy, you know, assumes that everybody has an equal right, an equal chance to either make it or to fail. And I think we should grant them that right. You know, I think we should not, we should hesitate from, no matter what will fail. You know, the campaign has not even started, right? And we shouldn't be raining on people's parades. You know, it's too early to say that some people stand a chance, some people do not stand a chance. Let's give them, you know, the platform. He has been asked to come here. He has, you know, has the opportunity to sell himself and to also project the confidence and all of that. You know, so I would think that it's good, you know, that we have many candidates running. There are 16 candidates from the 18 parties. You know, and that gives, so Nigerians cannot say that they do not have the opportunity of a choice, right? You know, so beyond the 4 that people are talking about now, right? There are 12 others. So, you know, it's good. It's good that, you know, people should have.
Technically, it should be an open field.
Yes, you know. So let's give them. Let's give them.
No, you're absolutely
a chance.
Right.
You know, and we can say yes, maybe no, but you never know. You know, that's the thing about politics. And like he said, the campaigns have not started. So maybe there's something else that we'll see during the campaigns, right? Maybe. So let's have an open mind.
That's a good point. So let's then move away from the SDP and you know, talk about the other parties that you mentioned. Let's start with looking a bit more closely at the NNPP, for example. Its candidate Rabiu Kwankwaso. We had Buba Galadima here a couple of days ago, senior member of the NNPP. he seemed bullishly confident, that same point that you're making, about the chances of the NNPP.
So bullish confidence might actually be a good replacement for delusion.
Yeah, it could be, but it's two words.
It's two words.
It's two
why not
words.
say optimistic?
Yeah, optimistic, yeah.
Something that is also neutral.
Yeah. No, that's a good, those are all good words. But I mean, he roundly dismissed any suggestions, and he's a very ebullient person, roundly dismissed any suggestions that they wouldn't get very far beyond Kano State, their political stronghold. Do they have cause to be optimistic?
Well, back to what we'll be talking about, and of course, it's very, very difficult to discuss these things realistically, and very practically, without sounding as if you are putting down
and without having statistical evidence.
That's right, but of course that's not the case. We're not putting down any of these political groups. We appreciate them. 3.5 years ago, when we had nearly about something of them contesting, we appreciated all of them because, do not forget what I said earlier, they populated the idea space, they stimulated discourses, and they helped in the understanding of the problems of this country, in how solutions can be found to some of our challenges. So to that extent, you cannot question them. They're always welcome. Of course, the essence of democracy is about integration and inclusion of ideas. That's what democracy is all about. So we welcomed it at this level. And of course, we have moved away from a two-party system. We have a multi-party democracy. So if we have that, then of course we expect that there will be much more political parties and actors, much more than the two behemoths that we've always recognized before Labour Party came in. But having said that, at the same time, we cannot run away from from actually making projections, looking at the prospects of some of these groups. Labour Party came almost from nowhere because of the instrumentality of an individual that had an outstanding pedigree, two-time governor, and has, a wonderful character, character in terms of, proven prudence, ability to manage resources, etc., etc. And of course, he engages with the public. People understand him. People have come to appreciate him. And there's widespread belief that he commands, a huge section of the demographics of the population, and a huge section of the nation's population. So many things working for him, because of this pedigree, he was able to rein in, he was able to influence, the perception of Labour Party, which is why Labour Party has risen, to be seen as a thought force. Now, coming to NNPC, I don't know really. I don't want NNPP. Yeah. I do not know really. Right. And if I'm going to talk about them, I don't want you to say I'm rude again. Sure. But of course,
I didn't say you were rude.
Yeah, it's a welcome addition. Yeah. Their adventures are welcome. They can be very exciting, listening to some of them, for instance. But what intrigued me most actually is their confidence. Their indescribable,
I think that's
unplaceable optimism.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, indescribable, unplaceable optimism, where I don't know where it is coming from.
That's a characteristic that is often associated with Nigerians, isn't it?
But it's not just Nigerians.
If you look at all the international polls, they called Nigeria the happiest country in the world.
No, Charles, I think it's a peculiar characteristic of the average politician.
Right.
And that's why the word delusion came in, They have this inner strength, that inner strength, comes out and you begin to look for empirical reasons.
Otherwise, you can say they're good blaggers as well.
And you can't find it.
Well, let me come to you, Waziri. I mean, we've talked about NNPP, Labour Party, SDP, and so on. After the storm of the Muslim ticket, the APC seems to be calming down. I mean, at least on the face of it, all the parts appear to be coalescing, uniting around their presidential candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the party's campaign council director, General Solomon Lalong. Well, what do you think about it?
Okay, before I answer that, I want to say something quickly about NNPP. I don't think we should also underestimate what that means, right? The person, their presidential candidate, is also a very colorful politician, right? Before even NNPP, he had this Kwankwasia movement.
Yes.
Right. And don't also forget that when APC did its primaries in 2014, before the 2015 election, Senator Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso actually came second after now President Buhari. So he's not somebody that you can just dismiss
to be
like
sniffed
that,
at.
you know. And he has his own following, not just in Kano. People usually try to say, okay, it's just Kano. It's not just Kano. It's Kano, it's Jigawa, some other parts of the northwest, including Katsina, and some parts of the northeast. Right. So it is a force. The same way Mr. Peter Obi is also a force to be reckoned with. One of the things that I also think we need to put in perspective, I'll come back to the APC question.
Briefly, because we've got about a minute.
One of the things that
left.
we need to put in perspective is that, there's always been a movement for some time in Nigeria that people are looking for an alternative to the establishment. If you remember, in 2011, there were young people that voted for President Jonathan and said, we're voting for him, not PDP.
Yes.
The same thing you had in 2015, where some people said, we're voting for Buhari. So we've always had this, that at some point, people will say, we want somebody fresh. So even what you see with Peter Obi now is not necessarily new. It's even beyond him. People are just saying, we want something different.
Yes.
So to talk about APC, and yes, APC seems to be getting its acts together. There are still some issues, even within the party. There are some people within the party that are still not happy with the choice of the running mate. But at the end of the day, this is what they're going to make sure that they come together to present a common front. But beyond that, there are also some Nigerians that are still bothered about this, the composition of the ticket, which is valid. The thing is that APC is not the only party, and we're not looking at just 4 parties. We have options. We've always had a situation where we have always had multi-party democracy, even from 1999, when we had 3 registered political parties. But what we've had is that we've had one dominant party or 2 dominant parties, and over time, we have these 2 parties scoring between 96 and 98% of the total votes. So whether that will hold in 2023 is a different thing. Whether Labour Party and NNPP will be able to score more than the previous third parties in previous election is something to be looked at.
We'll certainly be looking at that. Waziri Adio and, of course, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, thank you very much indeed. We're so much the wiser from listening to both of you. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.